What makes a game qualify for Game of the Year? This question came into my head after we talked about A Space for the Unbound back in July, and I had said that that game was Game of the Year material because it was so good. And as of right now, if you were to ask me today, that game is my #1 game so far. Now, if you were to ask me what my top 5 Game of the Year nominations are, if we were to close voting today, my nominations would be A Space for the Unbound, Street Fighter 6, Diablo 4, Hi-Fi Rush, and Star Wars Jedi Survivor in that order. Still need to play some Tears of the Kingdom. I need to play more of that. I need to play more Starfield. I haven't played Baldur's Gate either, so I need to figure out how to work all those long games out. You understand. But as of this moment, Space for the Unbound would be my Game of the Year. And so, Noah, I'm going to ask you to kick off this conversation and maybe debate. What makes a game qualify for Game of the Year?
So I'm a big math guy. I like numbers. I like math in general. And so when I'm playing a game, I kind of try to break it down. You know, what game has this going for it? What game has this? How much percentage of this? And I break it down to a mathematical formula that I found for myself, that if a game has 10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power. So yeah, that was my bad joke. But for me, like, my biggest thing that I look for when I think this deserves to be nommed is if I'm at work or if I'm, you know, out doing errands, I'm not thinking about what I'm doing then. I'm thinking I would rather be playing this game at home right now. That is the big thing for me. It's like, I don't want to be doing what I'm currently doing. I want to go back home and play this more.
Interesting.
The amount of times, like, I would be working shifts at the store and stuff like that, and Dave and I would be playing, you know, something new, and it's like, that's cool, but I really just want to go home, clock out, and go home and play this game. That for me, that sticks out as like, hey, this, if it sticks with you that much that you want to keep playing it, you would rather not do anything but playing it, it's got that addictiveness to it. For me, that's one big thing I look for.
So with what, are there any examples from this year where you have felt that way?
Tears of the Kingdom. Like, I the amount of times I was you know, guiltfully say on this podcast, I'm like, guys, I love talking to you, but I really want to play Zelda. I really would rather be playing. Like,
oh, I forgot. You straight up ditched us to go wait in line at GameStop.
I did.
To buy and play Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah.
I told David, I was like, so I kind of want to test something, but I ended up not doing it because I enjoyed playing Tears of the Kingdom on the dock so much because I got a bigger TV and stuff, and Pro controllers are just the best.
Yep.
I was like, should I try and do like the viral, like when the guy's trying to do that interview and he's going through McDonald's, like, see how long I can play Tears of the Kingdom on the podcast with you guys, and you're just like, oh yeah, can I have a fish sandwich? Like, just keep going. Like that was me. Tears of the Kingdom, man.
That's interesting because I feel like for me there are lots of games where I feel that way, but I don't feel like they're Game of the Year material. Like Borderlands, for example. When Borderlands 3 came out, that was a game that I was like, I want to go home and keep playing this. But I would never consider it for Game of the Year because there are like a lot of different issues with it. Most that I was willing to ignore because I like Borderlands and the loot stuff. It feels good to me, and you know, it was Borderlands. But I was like, there's some legitimate balance issues. There's some story issues. There's this kind of stuff. But for me, yeah, would I want to go home and just, yeah, I don't want to be here right now. I want to be playing Borderlands 3. I just got this thing, and I'm still trying to grind and, you know, get max level and all that. So that's an interesting take for you. Like that is the importance there.
Coming from like the looter guy, D2, like online games, where I was like, yeah, I want to, you know, I'd like to do a session, but it's very, for me specifically, games that stand out of it. It's like, I would rather be playing this game over those games. That is how impactful it is to me.
Jackson, it looked like you were trying to say something. Go ahead.
I wasn't, but I will.
Oh,
So
okay.
pretty much, if I had to choose what determined game of the year for me, I'd say it's how it stuck with me, how it impacted me. Not exactly like if I'm yearning to go back to play it, because I agree with you. I have a good few of those games. I'm more so looking at it from a unique gameplay aspect perspective. Like back when Titanfall 2 came out and it had immaculate multiplayer, very fun, very unique premise. There was that like time jumping, time traveling mission in the campaign that still sticks to me to this day. That's the kind of thing that nominates a game for Game of the Year in my mind. Just how it sticks with me and how it sticks in my mind based on how unique it is and how much fun I had with it.
So what's an example of that for you this year?
I have got to admit, I haven't been playing a lot of the big games that have been coming out. Battlebit, of course. I've been preaching it constantly.
Well, it doesn't have to be a big game. My game of the year so far is A Space for the Unbound, which, if I pulled up Steam right now, probably has like 200 something reviews on it. Like, it's not a popular game at all. It is particularly indie. So you mentioned BattleBit, but is there also another one?
One that's early access that came out that comes to mind. There are a few. Very indie. There's Dread Delusion, which I'm in the process of making a video for. It's early access, but the way it tells its story is so genuinely involved and unhinged that I can't get this game out of my head. Pretty much something bad happened to the planet. Now humanity lives on these island chains that just kind of float through space. A lot of like the gameplay itself isn't exactly thrilling. It's like kind of clunky, not all that interesting, but you get into the lore of it and the lore sucks you in, and how well they tie it into the gameplay. It's not even out yet, and it might not even be out in 2023, but it's already like a contender for me.
Okay, so that actually brings up a different conversation.
Yeah.
One that I haven't heard a ton of people talk about. Can and should early access games be considered for Game of the Year?
Probably not, because they can just be considered in the year that they are released. And there are plenty of like fully baked games that are out and could be like considered.
Okay, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a moment.
Okay.
You paid for it.
Yeah.
You get that access.
True.
They are taking money.
Yeah.
I understand why. We here understand why
Yeah.
they have made that decision. So I don't want to make. I just want to make that clear that we do get it. It's a business perspective. But what do you say to that?
We paid for it, and that should like possibly qualify it.
Well, you paid for it. You are getting some enjoyment out of it, or maybe not.
Maybe they could create
on
like
Steam. You can technically review it. You can already let people know, hey, this is how I feel about the thing, even though it is not something that is finished.
I mean, perhaps there should be another or more categories for Game of the Year, like its own early access category.
Interesting.
Or hear me out. Hear me out. Okay. If it comes out, the dev gets to choose. Okay. They're like, hey, we think you might be able to get nominated for Game of the Year this year. They're like, okay, cool. That's great. You're still in early access. They're like, okay, we'll do it. They're like, okay, cool. But you can't go up for nom again whenever you officially release. It's like that. Do you want to wait, and let your game cook a little bit and be like, I will wait until we officially release before we get, it's like that, hey, risk reward kind of thing. I would like that kind of a system. Yeah, it's like, do we risk it, because it might get worse, leaving early access with the full release. Yeah, so it's like, oh, we should have, nommed whenever we were in early access, or like give them that, that choice.
That's an interesting idea. I don't know if developers and publishers think that hard about
they
Game of the
would
Year.
not go for it.
Yeah.
They would not go. But it's just like, I just want Jeff Keighley to be on a call and be like, hey, we're thinking about putting you on the nom list. But here's the deal. If you say yes, you can't go back on again when you fully release. You know? Or if you say no, we'll let you come back once you fully release. And if, you know.
I think individual sites could be able to pull that off. I don't know if Jeff Keighley would be able to do that for the game.
Oh, I would love to. I would love to watch that Zoom call.
Oh yeah, no, that would be
amazing.
That would be pretty crazy. But for me, when I think about Game of the Year, two of the biggest things for me is it has to be either original or it has to do something in its genre that pushes it forward. So far this year, A Space for the Unbound, kind of walking simulator-ish 2D game that includes some gameplay elements. Number one, it's got a fantastic story. And then the gameplay elements that they include in there, they're simple. They're kind of like WarioWare type mini games that fit directly with the game. They're goofy, they're silly, but they work and they're fun and they're short. And then there's puzzle elements too that are not difficult necessarily, although they do become more difficult over time, but nothing where it's like you're going to sit there and have to go look at guides and stuff. But it's thoughtful, and the way they construe the puzzles goes directly with the story and how you solve things and the revelations that you get after them. And so to me, that is a very interesting and great way for these kind of story-based narrative walking simulator kind of games to go forward. Street Fighter 6 is second for me right now, but it definitely could flop because Street Fighter 6 right now, I think, has done for fighting games that fighting games have needed for a really long time, and that is make these complex fighting games more accessible and more approachable. I want to say I think we throw around accessible a little too much with that. I think Street Fighter 6 is accessible in some ways, but even more so approachable for people who are interested. And yes, even accessible for some of those people as well. And so it does that. And then it is the most robust and complete kind of training for people who are veterans and for complete newbies as well. And so it is one of those where it's like, this is the future of fighting games. The little story mode that they added. Every fighting game should have this from now on because it's a great approachable way for people who may not like PvP to get into a game like Street Fighter and still have their own fun without having to deal with the sweatiness of PvP. Every fighting game should be doing this. And so it kind of redefines the genre a little bit. And so that's the kind of things that I look for.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, you either have to do something no one else is doing or do something that people have already done or go into that genre, but do it different, uniquely, in your own way, or do it better. Like, I think when you have those combinations, that sets you apart from being a good game to genre defying, which I think a lot of people tend to intertwine with Game of the Year in a lot of ways. Like, if it redefines that genre, is usually kind of in that talk for Game of the Year. I reviewed Blasphemous 2, which is a really good... a lot of people throw it into the 2D Dark Souls category, which I can understand, and I can kind of see why they do that. But I really think it's more, and it feels more, in my opinion, more Metroidvania than Dark Souls. It's got a lot of similarities, and you're like, hey, that's in Dark Souls, but the overall experience is Metroidvania. It's definitely not, in terms of difficulty level, anywhere close to the Soulsborne game. And the majority of, in my experience, for a lot of the Soulsborne games, you're doing a lot more just straight on gameplay and encounters and engagements, where a lot of Blasphemous is going back, re-exploring areas, discovering secrets, hidden rooms, etc., that the Metroidvania genre is known for. And so this sequel picks up, obviously, after the first game with a new penitent one, which is the guy with a really pointy helmet. The game has a really cool theme of like guilt, and religious overtones, like Catholic churches and all this other fun and very happy subject matter, if you can't tell by the way it's designed. So there's this really premise of the story's not really set forefront. There's this entity called the Miracle. You're supposed to stop it, kind of thing. That's all you get really told. You're kind of just an errand boy, and you're like, I'm feeling guilty, so I'll do it. And that's all they really tell you. They just kind of let you do your thing. The thing that I liked about the story and the narrative is it wants to be discovered. It's not just straight up in your face, like, hey, here's exposition ABC. You have to go out and search for it. Similar to the Souls, like there's lore tabs for a lot of the background characters and things that are going on that you kind of have to discover for yourself. And so it kind of gives you a reason to search every corner of the map. So let me pull up my notes real quick, because I definitely have some things that I want to talk about, because they made me feel a certain way playing them.
Oh, yeah.
So picking up from the first one, the main new additions, which, when people are asking, what's new this time? I played the first one. Why should I play the second one? Good news is if you like the first one, you're going to like this one. It does a lot of things very similar to the first one. The biggest difference this time around is you have 3 weapons now that you can choose from. You can rotate freely. They each serve their own function, purpose, style. They all feel different, which, in a side scroller, I think is pretty impressive for me on a combat aspect. So that is what I call the stabby. It's just very light, fast. If you do so many repeated attacks, you'll trigger a lightning effect, which can kind of stun, which is kind of cool. Which, if you'll watch the gameplay, you have one of the other ones, which I call the bonk, which is just a big mace that's just slow, but it hits hard, and it's got the most range. Yeah. I've got stabby, bonk, and then slicey, which slicey is kind of the middle ground. It's a saber that does a mixture of range. It's kind of your generic, what I like to call the boring class, where it's jack of all trades. It doesn't really shine in any particular thing. It's kind of good everywhere. So you'll use those all throughout. It has really cool ways of interacting with the environment, with puzzles, platforming. You'll have to use each one if you want to unlock everything. Yeah, that's the bonk. I love the bonk. And even with the boss fights, they designed it so that some bosses are, with the way the encounters play out, are weaker against certain archetypes of your weapons. So some bosses, it's really good to have the light, nimble mobility, and some it's like they're slow moving, just bonk them, So that's really cool. I love it when, like David and I talked the other day, we love maps where it's not the same every time. Like the meta kind of shifts, and I love boss fights in video games where you have to adapt. Not every boss fight can just get one shot by the OP build. Like you have to kind of be flexible, and this game really allows that when you're playing. So, and that kind of leads into one of my other like big shining points for me was the art style, which is very dreary, a lot of depressing. The game's very sad, not in the sense
like
of it's just a lot of it's guilt, depression, a lot of bad things have happened to these characters, and it's got unique and creative characters like NPCs. You'll have some NPCs you can upgrade things with. Even the bosses are all unique. They talk independently. They feel creative. Like each boss fight feels intentionally and purposefully themed. So if you notice over the mini map, there were different areas. Those all have different themes and backgrounds. Like one's a city, one's up in the clouds. There's a almost underwater section, and those mini bosses and major bosses in that area, they all vibe and feel and work with that tone, which I don't think a lot of games do enough of. It makes sense why they do things the way they do. But yeah, it just overall, it's a fun game. I loved playing it. It's about 20 hours long to do what I explored what I could. I didn't explore everything. There are lots of side missions and quests that you have to do a certain way in order to progress them all the way through, which is really cool. Like you might experience something and miss something that I got to experience just with the way the game kind of puzzles the side quests. Those are a lot of things that I like. The biggest cons, which I put in my review, aside from the boss fights, these small minions that you're seeing me face, all of them have like one attack, and that's about it. I didn't think that there was a lot of variety in the attack patterns. It's you meet this enemy and you're like, okay, once I fight him once, I know what he does. So that kind of got boring after a while. The boss fights really excelled. But yeah, these regular ads and stuff, they literally have one attack and that's it. So once you kind of get used to it, you can roll through without too much hassle. They did have some new enemies, but some of the enemies that they brought back from the first game are kind of like reimagined, like a new form, which a lot of people will appreciate. And then, yeah, finally, the biggest thing, we talked about innovation earlier. They kind of played it safe for me when it comes to a sequel. It plays and feels a lot like the first game, with the only, new thing is 3 weapons instead of 1. Other than that, if you played the first one, it's going to feel really similar, which isn't a bad thing. It's still a great experience. It's still fun. I still enjoyed it a lot. But for someone who's looking at, taking it a step further, they didn't really do too much. That's why I gave it an 80 out of 100. I think if they would have done some more things to add flavor to enemy types, platforming, puzzles, and stuff like that, it would have taken it to the next level and would have gotten a higher score from me. But it's still a really fun experience. I definitely recommend it. The combat's fun. It's fluid. You can progressively get faster and more nimble. So it's kind of a little bit of everything, and it's not difficult in the sense of like a Soulsborne. Like I mentioned earlier, the boss fights, about half of them I was able to beat first try going in blind. So they're not too terrible. It's very approachable for someone who likes side scrollers, but is, they're afraid of the 2D Dark Souls stigma that this game has. So go in, enjoy yourself. It's really not that difficult. Yeah, it's a fun time. I enjoyed my time, and that's why I gave it an 80 out of 100.
Yeah, it looks It looks interesting. But you're right. It doesn't look deep, and maybe partially because we're not watching any boss battles here. But
yeah, the boss fights are one of the big pros, and I didn't show any gameplay because I want it's best to be a surprise. Because there's some weird looking bosses, man. They are some crazy looking, and also mechanically kind of wild with some of the stuff that they do. There was one boss in particular. It was one of the toughest boss fights that I've encountered, because you're constantly having to move against a enemy that is constantly moving and attacking. So, and that's a formula for success in my book.
Any boss that makes you move, I appreciate.
Coming from my rating days of it's like, hey, do this thing, go stand on a plate. If I have to move and think, you'll always win in my book.
Yeah.
Hey Noah, you said a lot of all the basic enemies are pretty one note and only have one attack. Were there times when they would pair multiple enemies together and that kind of made it more interesting, the way they synergized off of each other?
No, they didn't. The only time there was no like synergy, you might have two enemies like attack you there, but it's literally just one attack from each. So if you know how to avoid the one attack each enemy has, you're fine. And if you know how to position yourself to where you only have to engage, one at a time, it's definitely manageable. But there was no like two enemies teaming up for a combo attack, or like if these two enemies got close together, a new attack would appear. It was very basic. Each one does one attack.
Okay.
But even still, maybe they don't combine to create a new attack, but are there different, like, five enemies on screen and they're all different enemies?
Each area has specific enemies that are only in that area.
Interesting.
So, but the most enemies that I ever encountered would be like maybe in a room, maybe 4. There's some,
but they're all the same.
No, they're different, but they only have one attack. So
sure.
they can have. I might have misunderstood. Like you can have 2 different enemies in the same room.
Sure. So I think what Jackson may be referring to too is the idea of like those enemies. Yes, maybe they don't synergize, but do they create a form of difficulty because you're having to maybe this guy to avoid his attack, you want to jump, but there's this other enemy that attacks in the air, and so you have to figure out like spacing,
like an archer behind a shield dude. Or something.
No,
it never gets that complex.
Ooh.
No, like you'll have different enemies. Like you'll have some flying, some on the ground, but they attack so their attacks are so spaced out that it's pretty easy to avoid and take them out, kind of thing. That's why I was like
completely desynchronized.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of
interesting.
I think this is a very approachable game that way because it is not nearly of the same difficulty as Soulsborne's.
Sure,
a lot of the Souls, you'll have like just regular enemy types that can wreck you. These, there's not. The attacks are very spaced out. They'll do one attack and then it's like, okay, I'm going to go at you really slowly. I guess the difficulty aspect is for the basic, exploration component of it is when you're starting out, those vials, which are the little red glasses below my 2 health bars.
Yeah.
Or my health and my energy bar, those, it's like your vials and souls. They replenish your health. You start off with just a few and you have to explore to find more campfires, this game's version of campfires. And so some of those can be pretty spaced out when you're first starting out. And so some of the difficulty can be, if I really want to explore as much of the map as I can, I want to manage getting hit.
Yeah. Okay.
You want to manage your health. That, when you're first starting out, but once you unlock a lot of the campfires, I can't remember, they're trace something in the game, but they're basically campfires. Once you unlock those, the game exponentially becomes easier.
Interesting.
Because that's where you refill your health and your vials. I completely glossed over it. They have 2 prayers, which if you see the blue bar below my health, that's your energy for those prayers, and it's basically a light and heavy attack. They can do some elemental damage. So you have some fire, lightning, mystic, and they don't. I talked about it in my review. I kind of gave it a knock because I like the aspect of elemental attacks, but there was no indication or, I guess, evidence that one was particularly advantageous against a certain enemy type. It's they all kind of do the same damage amount. They're just different. It's like lightning versus fire. There's no reason for me to swap.
I'm usually late to the party because so many games to play and I don't have a bunch of time, but I am glad I came to this party because Battlebit is very, very good, particularly for an early access game. The skeletal system is there. The foundation is strong. Everything that you would expect from a Battlefield type of game is there. It feels like Battlefield. The movement, the weight, the weapon switching, squads, big bombastic encounters, the level design. It's there. All of it is there. The foundation is strong. As a Battlefield fan, I feel like I can mostly just jump in and just do a thing. There are a few minor improvements, changes, whatever. You can drag people. You can't do that in Battlefield. So that's a cool little thing. You just drag them to a different spot. Maybe you need to heal them up or whatever. So that's a nice little improvement. But other than that, there's not really a whole bunch of different stuff. This is fundamentally, it's Battlefield. And at this point, there's really not a lot to say about this because if you've played Battlefield, you've played Battlebit. You just haven't played Battlefield that looks like this. But I would recommend anyone getting this. And this is even more impressive for the fact that this is made by a 3-person team and they have gotten this far. But I do have a few concerns. My biggest one is I am wondering, can a 3-person team finish this game before the next good Battlefield comes out? Because even though the foundation is there, this game's got a long way to go before it is fully polished. It's playable. It's fun. But realistically, the movement is clunky at times. The sound doesn't hit as hard as Battlefield. The destruction isn't all the way there. I haven't seen any instance of levolution, and that's one of the things that they talk about on the Steam page is the levolution. The hit detection feels off at times. And I'm can blocky graphics really, bring the intensity that this kind of game deserves? I don't know. I'm not really feeling it. And then my biggest concern among the concerns is the Unity engine up to the task of taking on the Frostbite engine? That I am not sure about because the Frostbite engine was specifically designed for Battlefield. Unity, the jack of all trades. Yes, of course, you can change it to how you need it, but there are still some limitations. And I went back to watch some Battlefield 4 footage, and I was reminded how good that game is. I was like, Battlefield 4 is freaking good. The physics, the destruction, the sound effects, the graphics, and like all that stuff coalesce into what we love about Battlefield. So in some sense, like I don't want to be unfair to Battlebit. I haven't forgotten this is an early access game. This is absolutely an early access game. It is absolutely not finished. So I don't want to cast judgment on it or act like I'm reviewing it in that way. But I am concerned that for this 3-person team, this might be too big of a task before EA decides to step in. And, you know, if they are really feeling like Battlebit is taking a bit of their lunch, I feel like all they got to do is just like, hey guys, we're remaking Battlefield 3 and 4 and making it, you know, just to modern standards and whatnot.
Don't get my hopes up.
I'm there, but that's my point. Like, I'm there. Like, Battlebit? Nah, I'm not playing that. Why would I play Battlebit when I could go play Battlefield 4? Like, why would I do that? And so at this point, you know, I feel like they got some time because Battlefield 2042 is what DICE is focusing on. They're still finishing all their seasons and doing all that stuff. So it did poorly. So obviously, Battlebit is a great in-between. But if EA did something like that, I feel like Battlebit's not really going to last unless you're looking for a very cheap version of Battlefield. And the thing about it is Battlebit is so much like Battlefield that I feel like both really can't exist and have, and Battlebit can have that kind of success because it is so much like Battlefield. There's not too much differentiating Battlebit from Battlefield. The things that are different, all EA and DICE would have to do is just add those things. And then what's the point in playing Battlebit? That's my concern about the game. But from what I have played, I do enjoy it. I want it to get better. And I am curious to know, you know, how far they're going to get. They have gotten very far. Again, the foundation is laid. It is there. I am happy with it. I will play it more. But I am just concerned.
We are, I would say, years out from another Battlefield game. I think its more direct competition right now isn't even Battlefield. It's just keeping players in a time of like so many big video game releases like Baldur's Gate and Starfield. I believe the player count went from like 80,000 players and now it's at like 100,000, not 100,000, 10,000 active players. It's been a pretty big dip. But one thing the Battlebit devs seem to excel at is listening to community feedback and implementing it quickly. And I think that'll be a really big advantage they have in keeping an edge on the competition.
Okay. Well, you've been playing it a little bit longer than I have. So what are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are very fun. I love this game. I'm with you on that. I think it has some elements that kind of don't mesh too well, like some arcadey, some milsimmy. I'm not sure if you played it before or after the update, but recently, it's only recently that every player can bandage themselves.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it used to be you had to go to
did the update, and I think I downloaded it the next day. So
yeah.
I did not play it pre-update.
So it seems like they're kind of bringing it more towards like a casual audience rather than more towards like a milsimmy audience. It's got more on Battlefield. Like, I believe there are 7 classes instead of Battlefield's typical 4. We got the kind of dedicated leader position, the assault, the medic. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, is that what it is? You could just choose to be the squad leader, basically?
They kind of get their own like call-ins, like they can place a beacon, that kind of thing. Other than that, they don't function too differently. We have the assault.
I was wondering. That is one of the things I was wondering about. Like, how do you become squad leader? Because I was like, I'm playing with some really bad squad leaders every match that I kept playing, and they kept going to different points. And it's like, you do have to defend a point for a little while. Can we do that, please? We just need 3.
Oh, they just recently added points for defending, which as a support main I can appreciate, because supports. Yes. I'll get to supports first. Let me like go through the list. Assaults they're okay. They have grappling hooks that operate, in real life. You're not swinging around. You're getting to an elevated position, getting into a building, generally repositioning. We have medics who are currently kind of problematic in the game. Very arcadey. They move quite fast. They have access to SMGs. Big problem with SMGs is that they're just kind of better than assault rifles often. They do drop off, but in a lot of maps, a lot of maps are designed in a way that it doesn't really matter. So like the engagement distance is going to favor our SMGs regardless.
Sure. Sounds like a Battlefield problem.
Yeah.
At least 3, I think.
Yeah. They just recently nerfed lean spamming, which was something people were doing. Quite frustrating. But like I said, they're responding to criticism quite quickly and effectively, which is really nice to see. We have support. I main support. I love support. You can place down building like pieces instantly, like Roblox style, not Roblox, Fortnite style, just like instant cover, instant sandbags. They have access to their own unique kind of pieces of cover, like tall Hesco walls, that kind of thing. There's quite a bit of depth to it because you can like shave down your cover, because the cover itself is okay, but like you shave down one piece and then place on top of it one with like little holes in it, and now you have like a good fort, a good position, like a good dug-in position against like attacking enemies. And they just recently added defending points, so now there's a reason to like stay put and defend that place. There's recon, which they recently added larger muzzle flash for, because the second players realized they could get rid of all sniper glint by choosing a medium scope on snipers, they just started doing that. And so there was kind of an epidemic of just kind of, I'm running along, I'm using cover, and you're just gone, because there was no telegraphing to like alert you to the fact that there was a sniper anywhere, like at all.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got some issues, but they're being ironed out pretty quickly. I have to praise this game for, despite the Roblox graphics, it's quite immersive. I've had many a time where I'm just in a charge with like 50 people. Like 10 of them are scattered on different places on the ground, like screaming for help from the medics. Someone's chucking grenades and covering fire. People are trying to push up. It's kind of like prodding their defenses. It's quite an immersive experience. It's lovely. I haven't like felt this since Battlefield 4, to be honest. And I've missed it. And I'm excited to see where Battlebit goes from here.
Yeah, same. I played it and I was like, yes, this gives me the Battlefield vibes that I have been missing, that 2042 did not provide. I reviewed that game, so you can go look on Gaming Trend and see how I feel about that.
Pretty poorly.
Yeah. So to play this, well, the interesting thing about this, a thought I did have was Battlebit feels really good. And a lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot, but I have seen some people talk about Battlebit's doing better than AAA games. And it's like, it did better than one. Battlebit is not better than Battlefield 4. Like, I'm sorry, like it's just not. Even being complete, it would not be better than Battlefield 4. Good? Yes, absolutely. Playable? Absolutely. I would certainly say that. But this, it's just hard to picture how far this will go, because what Frostbite provides for Battlefield is, particularly in terms of physics, I'm just not sure how far Unity can go in that way. So while the bones and all that stuff are there, can Unity do it? That's really the question. And maybe that's not their goal. maybe their goal isn't to necessarily replicate all the physics that Battlefield would have. But if we are also talking about destruction, which they have like markings on some walls to show you like, hey, you can destroy this place, which that feels weird. But partially, the graphics kind of have to have some very specific spots where it's just like, yeah, you could definitely blow this thing
in
up.
Battlebit?
What?
You're saying in Battlebit there are sections of wall where you can just like see like the marks to shoot things and like blow it up?
Yep.
Do you mean like the texture? Or do you mean like there's like actual like X marks the spot stuff?
It's not like painted X marks the spots, but there's definitely like spots where it looks like it. I wouldn't say it looks quite like an X, but there's definitely like it's a marking where it's like, yeah, that blow it up. You could blow that out the wall.
That might have been players using the pickaxe to kind of like cut away some pieces of brick, because that's what you can do.
Oh, really?
It. Yeah, a lot of people like to do that so they can just kind of like cut out some bricks and then shoot through them at people.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't. So they thin out the wall so they can shoot through it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really cheeky.
That is cheeky, but I like that.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, okay, that makes sense. Still, with that said, that's actually a unique thing to Battlebit. Battlefield has never done anything like that. Not that they needed to, with all the mortar shells and tanks and helicopters that you can do. But yeah, I just wonder, knowing what Unity is as an engine, like what is available and what is possible with this in comparison to what Frostbite can provide at the end of the day. But with that said, again, after this podcast, I would have no problems like hopping on and playing some Battlebit, because it does scratch the itch that Battlefield would give me. And again, the movement, like besides some of the clunkiness, like it feels good. I love the pace. I love the speed. The teamwork is there. The squad work is there. All that stuff you would need for basic Battlefield. And this is beyond basic, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But everything that I would need for that is there. So it is absolute, sometimes you just die. It's just like, yo, like, I thought I was clear. Nope. Old boy up in the sixth story, staring down right at your spot. Oh, okay. That sort of stuff. Like that surprise, your ability to surprise other people, your ability to spawn on squad mates and keep the fight going while you try to get a point back, your strategy to try to take over the most points. All those things are there. That's the stuff I love about Battlefield. But I don't want to ignore what else makes Battlefield good is kind of that ancillary stuff, the beautiful explosions. I would honestly say the realistic graphics do help Battlefield feel even more immersive in that way. And so stuff like that, it's like, yeah, that's why Battlefield is Battlefield. But in terms of just raw gameplay, Battlebit, 2 thumbs up. Absolutely.
I also think it leans a little further into the sandboxy element than like standard Battlefield games.
It sounds like it. I hadn't explored that. I didn't even know like the pickaxe and like supports being able to like kind of build their own stuff. That was a thing. I hadn't seen anybody doing it. And I just kind of popped in on Medic and was like, I'm in.
Almost every building, I believe, is destructible, if not every building. So I've had games with like dedicated squads of players who just kind of want to destroy the whole map. And by the end, the like victory screen is just of a leveled city. And it's just a scale you don't really see in Battlefield. It's like the graphics are worse, yeah, but like
I'm not worried about the blocky look.
Yeah, the change is just like amazing.
I do wonder how far that goes, though, because I was wondering about, again, all the games that I played, I did not see that level of destruction at all, even with tanks and choppers available. So I do find it fascinating that you can destroy everything, but I do wonder how that does impact the game, because once they level everything, then it's kind of like, okay, like what's the cover? Where's the high ground? Like,
well, I'm kind of glad it requires such a dedicated squad effort where you can do it, but it takes like a lot of time and resources.
Oh, okay.
But just having the base destruction of like almost everything is destructible there means that you could be in any building and a tank starts firing at you and the building just kind of starts like crumbling around you.
Oh yeah.
And you shamble down a stairwell, your team scrambling around. It's great.
Yeah, that is one of the most, that was always one of the most terrifying things in Battlefield. You think you got cover? Boom, nope. You're done. So the fact that has this too, I love that. Those are the kind of things that make you enjoy these kind of games. That really nothing that Call of Duty could provide. Really, no other first-person shooter can provide. And I've always said this about Battlefield: when Battlefield is good, first-person shooters are good. When there's a good Battlefield on the market, that's a good year for first-person shooters. You got your Call of Duty, you got your Battlefield, and all that provides a good Halo, all that stuff. Go ahead, Noah.
That's I'm glad you said when Battlefield is good. That's one of the questions I have for the two lads. So it seems like, because we'll just say 2042 was met with mixed reception at best. We'll just say mixed.
That's very kind.
I'm being very kind. And it seems like this is kind of giving people an outlet to scratch that itch, that Battlefield itch. Absolutely. So my question for you two is, does this do enough to where, if in a world where where 2042 was a success, like not outstanding or anything, but like it was positive and people were enjoying it and still playing it, do you think Battlebit would have anywhere near the success?
Yeah, I think it'll definitely always have, like, even if it's a bit niche, it'll always have a good active player base. I don't think it'll ever be like dead for a long time to come. I do think a lot of people will go to Battlefield, but I think this game offers enough on its own to just kind of stand alone, like as a little cult classic. That's my concern, because it looks fun. Like the gameplay looks like Battlefield, and I'm sure it's very comparable to Battlefield. That's my concern, is if there is a new Battlefield game that comes out, or even if it's like we're remaking Battlefield 4, they do the Modern Warfare route. Is there enough for this game to stand on its own if there's a new Battlefield in the field?
I would answer that no.
That's my concern too. I'm afraid that if there's a good Battlefield in the gaming sphere, that this game would.
Yeah,
people would leave.
Absolutely, most people would leave. Definitely, most people would leave because, again, as it stands right now, which is part of my concern of how long it's going to take to really get this thing up and going. I just don't think it has the strengths that Battlefield has, and what makes that so freaking good. As I play this and it scratches the itch, but then I go watch Battlefield 4 gameplay and I'm like, oh, I want that.
Yeah.
The question is, when will the next good Battlefield come out?
And that's a problem for EA.
Yeah,
that's their problem. And
the most recent statement was kind of like hazy. They just said something about going back to basics or something, or about reinventing the wheel. It was really generic.
I mean, those are two different things. Going back to basics.
No, it was just such a generic statement. It gets boggled in my brain. I just time will tell, but I think that the sandboxy elements offer enough for people to come back just for the merits of Battlebit, especially when we're looking at the fact that, let's say, the next Battlefield comes out in like 2 years, 3 years. It probably won't. This game will probably evolve a lot by then.
Sure, yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like if EA really was like, we don't like Battlebit eating our lunch right now. All I think it would take is, hey guys, we're remaking Battlefield 4. Oh,
Hey,
hey guys, we're
thank you so
remaking
much.
Bad Company 2. Oh, you know, like that's
Like-
all it would take to get players off of Battlebit. Because my problem is, I just don't think the sandboxy elements impact gameplay enough. Not to say to justify its existence, I just don't think it impacts the gameplay enough in the 5 or 6 matches. I didn't even know that stuff was in there, right? So like I'm just playing Battlebit as I'm playing Battlefield, and I'm not noticing like these different elements that are happening. And I'm like, now that I know that they exist, I'm just curious to know how impactful they are at this point, or are they just kind of like cheesy fun? And I don't think Battlefield players care about sandboxy
I think they're more
elements.
gameplay. They want gameplay. They want guns,
Well,
destruction.
Sandboxy stuff is gameplay in this regard. So I wouldn't go there. I just don't think that's the kind of stuff they would look for in a Battlefield. Oh, I get to kind of create my own little cover system and build this thing. And, you know, like, I think it is more, I think as Jackson described it, mill sim type of thing. It's more about squatting up, taking over points, driving the tanks, getting to positions, you know, basic, but the way Battlefield does it. That's my argument.
Do either of you see Battlebit getting, because you said it was what, 3 devs and indie, I'm assuming, the self-published. Do you see them getting a publisher coming in and being like, hey, we think you guys have something pretty cool. We're going to
No, but what I want them to do is to get more people to help them finish this, because I want them to finish this. I want them to get as far as they can before another good Battlefield comes out. Now, that could be in the next 10 years, but for as far as a good Battlefield is concerned. But I like what they're doing. I like this.
I think the small team size might be a bit of a benefit, because it's very.
I'm not saying they have to like grow to 100. I'm just saying, just get some more people to help. Like, you're handling patching the stuff, you're handling, you know, community stuff, you're handling new developments. Like that's a lot to do for 3 people. I don't care if you're working on it 24 hours a day. That's a lot.
True. But also I think that's a benefit of like Unity and like low graphics, all of that. Like, I think they have an advantage in adaptability right now, because they are adapting very quickly.
But when we say adapting very quickly, like, what are these changes? Are they actually like, you know, game modes and actual like gameplay fixes in terms of like again, the hit detection's not great. I'm seeing a whole bunch of stuff about cheating. I'm seeing again, the movement stuff is a bit clunky. Like, these are very like fundamental, like you got to get this right at the end of the day in order to make it feel like great.
But even like a month back, that laundry list was twice the size. So like, I'd say they're going through things professionally, yet like quickly. They don't want to like rush through changes, but I'd say the changes they are making are benefiting the game, and they're moving at a reasonable pace in fixing it.
Okay. All right. I still would like them to get some more help.
That's fair.
At the end of the day.
You can never have too many. When you have three, anything's more than, you know, better than 3.
Because I mean, this is phenomenal for 3 people. Like, this is absolutely phenomenal. But I want more.
And that's good. I'm glad you want more. I think this.
Yeah, I want more of this, and I want more. I want them to get more help in getting this stuff done.
I think this game has a lot to offer, and it has a lot of ways it can evolve, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
My last question is, just because I couldn't hear the audio. When you die, do you do the little like Lego crumbly noise? Because if not, I think that's a really missed opportunity.
No.
I'll pass then.
You
I'll
die.
stick to COD.
Yeah,
I'll stick
you
to
might
COD.
want to do that. But there was nothing like that in Battlefield either. You just kind of died.
That's how they can be better. That's how they can be.
That's the differentiator right there.
Mm-hmm.
Use what you have to your advantage. Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I like it. I would recommend to anybody who's a Battlefield fan to play this because it is that good. Concerns aside, like you're gonna have some fun for sure, no doubt. All right.
I think this is my game of the year. Battlebit.
Ooh. Okay, an early access game.
Yeah.
Game that is unfinished. A game that does have some issues to resolve.
True.
Okay. Feels
The
good.
hours I've put in speak for themselves.
How many hours have you put into it?
That's actually a great question.
Curious.
Opening this Steam library.
Yeah, and they have
81.
81. God dang.
Yeah.
How long has this game been out?
A few months.
April, I think. I think it came out in April.
About
Respect, my guy. That is.
They
that
put
is
it out in early access. Yeah.
He has been
For sure.
on the Battlebit.
Yeah, man. Yeah, now that I have it, we're definitely gonna have to find some time to play.
Absolutely.
In the squad. Their squads are huge too. There's like 8 people in a squad. I was like, frick.
It's quite nice because you always have someone to spawn on and you're never like caught out of the action and a lot of times.
But I feel like that's the strategy in Battlefield. Like you got 4 people, so if you're the last one, you better stay your butt alive.
Spamming respawn while you just see players in combat is iconic. I've had a few of those moments in Battlebit.
Oh yeah.
Especially when someone straps a landmine to a drone and flies it into my team.
I have not seen that, but wow.
I love that kind of thing. The creative outside the box thinking.
I agree. That's the kind of stuff that makes Battlefield and BattleBit so much fun. Like you can go and just do that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm rooting for BattleBit. I hope it does. Hope it does well. But once Battlefield comes, then it's good.
It comes back.
I know. If. That is a big if. All right, that'll do it for us tonight. It was fun. Hope y'all enjoyed it. So signing off. Talk to you later. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Deuces.
Later.